Welcome to my new series, Series Starter, in which I try the first book of a series and see if I like it. First book, The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I'm Veronica, and this is the Reading Chronicles. I had no intention of reading this book as soon as I did. I was aware of it, and of course I had heard of the Netflix movie based on it, and I supposed I would see it at some point, of course reading the book first. But when my friend mentioned to me that Lucifer Morningstar was on it, well, I suppose I'm a simple woman because I put the book on my library hold list that day so I could see the movie. The mystery genre is a bit hit or miss for me. I don't typically consider myself to be a mystery reader, but when I think about it, I kind of did start out by reading mystery books. When I was a child, I cut my teeth on Encyclopedia Brown and Nancy Drew. Psych is one of my favorite shows of all time, and Monk is definitely a comfort watch. And as you can tell, Sherlock Holmes is one of my favorite series. We'll get to him at some point in this series. Of course, I've already read all of those books. I also really enjoyed reading The Elderly Lady is Up to No Good books by Helene Thurston earlier this year. So I guess I am a fan of mystery. Any genre is going to have books that cheapen it and books that elevate it, so I shouldn't hold the fact that some books are cheesy and the plots are contrived against the entire genre. This is to say, I was a bit skeptical going into this book, and I sort of expected it to be like a quick read with not a whole lot going for it. The Thursday Murder Club centers around a group of 4 residents living at Cooper's Chase, which is known as Britain's first luxury retirement village. In the opening pages, Joyce, a former nurse, is approached by Elizabeth, who asks her the awkward question of how long she thinks it would take a girl to bleed out if she had been stabbed 3 or 4 times. Just your normal, everyday question. Of course, the question isn't random. Elizabeth pulls out a folder with some details of a case inside of it. When Joyce asks if she could take a look at the pictures inside the case, the pictures of the corpse out of professional interest, Elizabeth invites Joyce to join her and her 2 companions on Thursdays for what they call the Thursday Murder Club. The club consists of Elizabeth, Ron, Ibrahim, and formerly Penny, a resident who has since been moved to the nursing home section of Cooper's Chase. On Joyce's first Thursday, the club is working on the unsolved murder of the group Elizabeth initially asked her about. To Joyce's mind, the club doesn't actually plan on enacting justice in this case. Penny and Elizabeth have solved many cases to their own satisfaction, but justice couldn't really be carried out this way. The murderers will go unpunished and get away with their crimes. The older you get, the more you have to come to terms with that, Joyce tells us. This is until a fresh murder lands at their feet. When Tony Curran, a local developer and business partner to Cooper's Chase's Ian Bentham, who is the owner of Cooper's Chase, I think that's what he was, I don't quite remember. Well, when Tony turns up dead and an incriminating photo mysteriously appears beside him, the group works together to find out exactly what is happening to the people related to their home. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything about the mystery itself. I will say that it has its twists and turns, and perhaps a bit too much because I did find it a little bit difficult to follow how everything was connected in the end. I would have needed to write things down in a tree to fully remember who was connected to whom and who had beef with whom. I will also say that I did not guess the whodunit or the whydunit of the main mystery or any of the side mysteries that pop up during their investigation. Well played, Mr. Osman. As I thought about this, I realized that part of what keeps me away from the mystery genre and from proclaiming myself to be a mystery fan is that many of these sorts of stories are solely focused on keeping the reader guessing with red herrings and putting our protagonist in peril, even when we know no harm can come to them because the story or the series couldn't continue without them. And that didn't really happen here. Things that could have been red herrings really weren't. They might not have been the solution to the mystery, but they did end up being important in some way. And Osmond never really puts his characters in falsely dangerous situations just for the purpose of stringing the reader along. And I appreciated both of these things. But what I appreciated most was that this was a story as much about the four people in the club and the realities of aging as it was about the murder at its center. I saw a critique somewhere online about the abundance of young protagonists in novels and authors saying that they have to have them so that readers will have someone to connect to make the stories be relatable. And I didn't really understand this because I don't remember ever exclusively reading stories with protagonists who were my age or choosing stories based on the ages of the protagonists. Maybe because I'm in my 40s now, I'm more interested in reading stories with older protagonists, but it was also never the case that I only read stories about teenagers when I was a teenager or about 20-somethings when I was in my 20s. That just seems absurd to me. All of this is to say that I found Osmond took such care to present the four members of the group as fully fleshed out individuals who still have a lot to offer in their golden years. There is some poking fun at age, to be sure, some being mystified by Skype or being introduced to Tinder for the first time, but I could tell that this came from a place of love and a place of identification on the author's part. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I've never used ChatGPT, I don't trust it, and that's probably where my age shows itself. Plus, I have read too much science fiction. Almost this entire shelf is Ray Bradbury, and I know what happens if we trust AI too much. But Osmond never presents his characters as inept simply because they may be unfamiliar with technology. Most of all, they are all endeavoring to be needed, to still matter, and I think that's something that will come to us all. I think it's something that we can all identify with, maybe not in the moment, but at a future point in time. Our society is so eager to dismiss older people because they don't know what it means to swipe left or swipe right, when really that is the lowest measure of a person's worth. There is also a strong awareness of the passage of time, of the memories of loved ones who have passed, of seeing loved ones starting down the long path that may lead to their final departure. Penny, bound to her bed in the nursing home, is a stark reminder of this, but the other residents are watching that same slow decline happen to others in their lives, knowing that the inevitable can only be avoided for so long. There is also the effort to forge new relationships and the appreciation for the tranquility and purpose they bring. While going over potential murder suspects one night, Ibrahim asks Ron where his place is, where he finds his peace, and Ron responds, "If you'd asked me a question like that a couple of years ago, I'd have laughed and left, wouldn't I? Honestly, I'm flicking through it all in my head, all the things you're supposed to say. But listen, it might be here in this chair with my mate, drinking his whiskey, dark outside, with something to talk about." This is a story with heart, full of love for the lives of the people who come to live at such communities. Not to be forgotten is the development of the constables who come to begrudgingly at first work with the members of the Thursday Murder Club. PC Donna DeFreitas is 26 and initially comes to Cooper's Chase to deliver a talk on practical tips for home security, not for the first time. However, she's surprised by the pushback she receives from the audience, who say they don't need to know about window locks or ID cards or giving their PINs to people over the phone. Instead, suggests one resident, Elizabeth, in fact, they might talk about institutional sexism in the police force, or whether Donna has ever captured a heroin dealer. For a young woman who would much rather be chasing criminals, possibly getting shot in the process, than giving tips on home security, the topic is of particular interest, and it is thanks to the club that she will eventually join Detective Chief Inspector Chris Hudson to become one of the primary investigators on the Tony Curran case. As for Chris, well, I really enjoy that if they were going to be a character fixated on their weight and home life, feeling as though they were falling short in both, it would be a man. And not just that, it's a man who is still highly capable at his job, because guess what? Men can worry about those kinds of things too, and it doesn't have to turn them into bumbling, emasculated idiots. For all popular culture tells us, worrying about body image or whether or not there will ever be someone at home to greet us is not an inherently feminine trait. It is a human one, and I have to thank Osmond for taking that stereotype to task. Aside from the aforementioned somewhat convoluted nature of the story, the one criticism I have is the choice to offer some of the narrative as entries in Joyce's diary. As the new member to the club, she serves as the audience surrogate, so it would make sense to tell the story from her point of view, but the story is told from a number of viewpoints, making the first-person narration of these diaries a bit jarring. It could have been just as effective to center some of the characters on Joyce using a limited third-person point of view, as is done with some of the other characters. I think we would have still felt close to Joyce, given that she, like us, is new to everything in this club. But while the choice seemed odd to me, it didn't really impede the story in any way, and it didn't make me enjoy it any less. I've since seen the Netflix movie, so I'll give a brief opinion on that. I'll say it's about 70% faithful to the book. There is Joyce being invited to the club by Elizabeth, the visiting of Donna de Freitas to give a talk at Cooper's Chase, the aforementioned death of Tony Curran, the finagling of the group to get Donna on the case, and Elizabeth visiting Penny in the Cooper's Chase nursing home. But while the characters' richly layered backgrounds are slowly revealed throughout the course of the book, they're put right up front in the movie with the characters directly explaining who they are. To me, this was a less effective way of getting the audience to relate to the characters. It was literally telling instead of showing. There wasn't the chance to come to a deeper understanding of who anyone was because it was all put out right up front in the first 10 minutes of exposition. The mystery itself is also considerably simplified. Given my criticism of the intricate nature of the mystery's plot, I didn't actually find this to be better. I suppose this had something to do with it being a 2-hour movie rather than a 6 to 10 episode series, which I think might have been more successful. Characters who play a huge role in the unraveling of the mystery are relegated to just a few lines in the movie, and their involvement is basically erased. The motive for the murder is also completely different, giving it far less weight than it had in the book, and the solution to a tangentially related mystery basically comes to Elizabeth as if from divine inspiration rather than the clues that lead to it in the book. It's as if the writers of the movie couldn't trust the audience to follow a more intricate plot. Perhaps this is a fair assumption if they wanted to reach a wider audience, but in doing so, they alienated who their real audience would be. That is to say, fans of the book and fans of well-crafted mysteries. I will say that the casting was excellent. Helen Mirren is nothing short of fantastic as the vivacious, devil-may-care Elizabeth. Celia Imrie imbues Joyce with the curiosity and delight of becoming involved with the club. Ben Kingsley is wholly credible as a retired psychiatrist who desires an order to everything. And while I kept picturing Ron Perlman as Ron, which couldn't have been a choice since he's not British, it's hard to ever find fault with Pierce Brosnan. I will say the same for David Tennant as Ian Bentham and Tom Ellis as Jason Ritchie. Also, he doesn't really have as much to do here as he does in the book. 'Tis a shame. Naomi Ackie is wonderful as the capable yet underused PC de Freitas, so my only criticism here is not the casting of Daniel Mays as DCI Chris Hudson, but the choice to portray him as slovenly and inept. While the book makes it clear that he doesn't take the best care of himself, I also never pictured him as gross, or as the bumbling idiot he sometimes is in the film. While all of the characters are far more nuanced in the book, he is the one who is most reduced to a stereotype in the film. With such a rich story to build on, it's really too bad that the movie chose to make everything as simple as possible, but I suppose that's movies for you. There are currently 4 other books in the series. The Man Who Died Twice, who centers on an old friend of Elizabeth who needs their help after having been accused of stealing millions of pounds worth of diamonds from the wrong men. The Bullet That Missed, about a decade-old cold case that brings them to a local news celebrity and a murder that seems to have no body and no answers. No body, no crime. The Last Devil to Die, in which the club receives the shocking news that an old friend has been killed and the dangerous package that he was protecting has gone missing. And the most recent, The Impossible Fortune, in which it seems one of the group is getting married, only to have one of the wedding guests who asked Elizabeth for help go missing. Verdict time? To continue or not continue this series? Continue. I did not expect to adore this book as much as I did. It was both an engrossing and an endearing read, and I can't wait to meet these 4 retirees in their upcoming pursuits. Did you read The Thursday Murder Club? Have you read any of the other books in the series? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.